My hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn the dial. 36, 18, 27. And when that safe finally clicked open, I expected cash for my medicine. Instead, I found life insurance policies worth millions with my name on them, and my son listed as the beneficiary, all dated 3 years ago right after we stopped speaking. But that wasn't even the worst document in there. I sat there staring at the documents for what felt like hours. But it was probably only 20 minutes. Time moves differently when you're drowning in shame. The rain kept falling outside. Each drop against the window sounded like an accusation. Thief. Failure. Desperate woman with no other options. I closed my eyes and the memory came flooding back. Charles was 21, home from MIT for winter break. He'd walked in carrying that heavy gray box under his arm. "What is that?" I'd asked from the kitchen. He'd grinned. God, when was the last time I'd seen him really smile? "Protection, Mom, for important things." I dried my hands on a dish towel and followed him to the living room. He'd set it down in the corner with such care, like it contained something precious. "Charles, we don't have anything valuable enough to lock in a safe." He'd looked at me then with those serious brown eyes. "Not yet. But we will." Now pause for a second. This was before the billions, before Forbes, before everything. This was still my boy who dreamed big but hadn't made it yet. He'd spent that entire break setting it up, bolting it to the floor, programming the combination. "I'm putting some cash in here," he'd explained, "and important documents, birth certificates, that kind of thing." "Why now?" I'd asked. He'd gotten quiet for a moment. "Because I'm going to make it, Mom. And when I do, I need to know you're protected." My chest tightened at the memory. Not from the breathing problems this time, from the weight of what we used to be. Back then, Charles would stay up until 3 a.m. at the kitchen table, his laptop open, energy drinks scattered around him. Coding, always coding. I'd wake up for my early teaching shift and find him still there. "Did you sleep at all?" I'd ask. "Sleep is for people who aren't building something that matters," he'd say. Then he'd look up at me and grin. "We're going to make it, Mom. You won't have to teach forever." Can you imagine? Those late nights weren't just about him getting rich. They were about taking care of me. Or at least that's what I thought. He used to tell me everything back then. His business ideas, his fears, his plans. "I'm going to build something that changes how people work," he'd said one night. We were eating leftover pizza at midnight. Just the two of us in our small kitchen. Productivity software, but smarter, more intuitive. "I don't understand half of what you're saying," I'd admitted. He'd laughed. "That's okay. You don't have to understand tech. You just have to understand that I'm doing this for us." For us. Those two words echoed in my head now. When did us become just him? When did my son stop needing his mother? Think about that. I opened my eyes and looked at the safe again. The combination was upstairs in my dresser, in an envelope I'd never opened, because I'd never needed to, never wanted to. Opening that safe meant admitting I'd failed at everything. Failed at staying healthy. Failed at staying independent. Failed at being the strong mother who didn't need anyone. If you're thinking this is more complicated than just opening a safe, you're absolutely right. Another cough rattled through my chest. This one was shorter, but sharper, like my lungs were filled with broken glass. I pushed myself up from the floor. My legs shook as I stood. The room tilted slightly, and I grabbed the back of the armchair, waited for my vision to clear. "You're not crazy for thinking this is insane. A mother shouldn't have to steal from her son to stay alive." But here I was. I walked slowly to my bedroom, each step measured, careful. My body felt like it might give out at any moment. The dresser sat against the far wall, Same oak dresser I'd had for 30 years. Top drawer, underwear and socks. Second drawer, the envelope. I pulled it out with trembling hands. White envelope, slightly yellowed at the edges. Mom, written in Charles's handwriting across the front. His handwriting from 14 years ago. Neater than it probably was now. Back when he still wrote me actual letters sometimes. I carried the envelope back to the living room. Sat down on the couch across from the safe. Just holding it felt like a betrayal. The paper was thick between my fingers. I could tear it open right now. Or I could put it back and call Charles, swallow my pride, ask for help, rebuild our relationship. Let that sink in for a moment. That's what a healthy person would do, right? But I wasn't healthy in any sense of the word. My body was failing. My pride was poisonous. And the gap between me and my son felt wider than the Grand Canyon. I stared at his handwriting. Remembered him as a little boy practicing his letters at this same coffee table, tongue sticking out in concentration. How do you spell astronaut, Mom? He'd wanted to be an astronaut back then. Then a doctor. Then an engineer. Always something big. Always something that mattered. And here's where it gets worse. He'd achieved everything he'd dreamed of. Everything except having a relationship with his mother. The coughing fit came out of nowhere. Violent and sudden. I doubled over on the couch. The envelope fell from my hands onto the floor. Each cough tore through my chest like a knife. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't stop. Couldn't do anything but hurt. My vision spotted at the edges. Black dots dancing across my eyes. I stumbled toward the kitchen. Needed water. Needed air. Needed help. My hip hit the counter hard. The pain barely registered through the coughing. I gripped the edge with both hands, tried to pull air into my lungs. Finally, the fit passed. I hung there over the sink, gasping, shaking, scared. The copper taste in my mouth was stronger now. I turned on the faucet and cupped water in my hands, rinsed my mouth, splashed my face. When I looked up, I could see the living room from here, the safe in the corner, the envelope on the floor. Decision time, Cassandra. Die proud or live ashamed. If you've dealt with someone like this, you know exactly what I mean. Sometimes there's no good choice. Sometimes every option makes you hate yourself. I pushed away from the counter, walked back to the living room on unsteady legs, picked up the envelope from where it had fallen. My hands didn't shake anymore. Some part of me had made the decision without asking permission. The envelope tore open easily. Inside was a small piece of paper. Charles's handwriting again. A series of numbers. 36 to 1827. That's it. 3 numbers that meant everything and nothing. I know. I couldn't believe it was actually happening either. I knelt down in front of the safe. My knees cracked against the hardwood floor. The metal dial was cool under my fingers. I turned it right first. To 36. Then left past 0. To 18. Then right again. To 27. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. The dial clicked into place. I grabbed the handle and pulled. The safe door swung open with a soft, terrible click. Just like that. 14 years of trust. Gone in 3 numbers. I peered inside. Expected to see cash, stacks of bills, emergency money. But that's not what I found. The safe was meticulously organized. Everything in clear plastic folders. Documents, papers, contracts. All labeled and dated and arranged like some kind of filing system. I pulled out the first stack. My hands were shaking again now. The folder was labeled Primary Holdings, Confidential. Inside were contracts, legal documents, pages and pages of them. I flipped through slowly, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. corporate acquisition agreements, real estate holdings, investment portfolios. But wait, it gets better. Some of these were dated from years ago, from when Charles was still in college, from before he'd even made his first million. I pulled out another folder. This one was labeled Contingency, Board Access Only. The documents inside made even less sense. Shell companies, offshore accounts, names I didn't recognize. Confusion prickled up my spine. Why would Charles keep these here? Why would he tell me this was emergency cash? I dug deeper into the safe. More folders, more documents, more questions. Estate planning, do not discuss. Asset protection, mother excluded. That last label hit me like a punch to the gut. Mother excluded. My son had labeled something mother excluded and locked it in my house. If your blood is boiling right now, mine was too. I grabbed the thickest folder from the bottom of the safe. No label on this one. Just a plain manila folder stuffed with papers. I opened it on the floor in front of me. The first page was a contract. Legal language I barely understood. But I understood enough. I understood the date. 3 years ago. Right after our fight. I understood the parties involved. Charles Williams and someone called Sterling and Associates. And I understood the subject line at the top of the page. Comprehensive Life Insurance Policy. Cassandra Williams. Beneficiary. Charles Williams, LLC. My blood went cold. My hands froze on the paper. Life insurance. On me. With him as the beneficiary. I flipped to the next page, then the next. More policies. Different companies. All dated within weeks of our last conversation. All with my name. All with his company as beneficiary. The room started spinning. This wasn't emergency cash for me. This was something else entirely. Something that made my stomach turn. I lifted the contract closer to my face. My vision blurred, partly from tears, partly from shock. The numbers at the bottom of the page swam before my eyes. 7 figures. Multiple 7 figures. My son had taken out massive life insurance policies on me. Without telling me, right after we stopped speaking, and the dread that washed over me then. I can't even describe it, because this was just the first contract, and there were dozens more beneath it. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. 7 figures, multiple policies, all with my name on them. I set the life insurance contracts aside, tried to breathe, tried to think, tried to make sense of this. Why would Charles take out life insurance on me? Why wouldn't he tell me? And why would he lock these documents in my house? The questions spun through my mind like a hurricane. I reached back into the safe, pulled out another folder. This one was thicker, heavier. The label read, Board Compliance, Restricted Access. I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside were corporate documents, legal agreements dated from 2023. The year after they isolated me from you, I scanned the first page. Dense legal language that made my head hurt. But certain phrases jumped out at me. Board approval required for all familial financial transactions exceeding $10,000. I read it again, then again. Now pause for a second. Charles was a billionaire. His company was worth billions. But he needed board approval to give his own mother $10,000? I flipped to the next page. More restrictions. More chains. CEO shall not allocate company resources to family members without unanimous board consent. Personal charitable donations exceeding $50,000 require board review and approval. Any attempt to circumvent these provisions shall constitute breach of fiduciary duty. My chest tightened. Not from the breathing problems this time. From rage. Pure, burning rage. Charles couldn't help me even if he wanted to. His own board had him trapped. I need you to understand something. This wasn't just corporate oversight. This was a cage built from paperwork. They'd turned my son into a prisoner of his own company. I kept reading, digging deeper into the folder. Found a document titled Succession Planning, Incapacity Protocols. The date on this one was only 6 months old. In the event of CEO incapacity due to health emergency, mental incompetence, or prolonged absence. The words blurred together, but the meaning was crystal clear. They'd been planning what would happen if Charles couldn't run the company, planning what would happen if something happened to him. And here's where it gets worse. The next section detailed how incapacity would be determined. Not by doctors Charles chose, by doctors the board appointed, not by family, by board vote. If you're thinking this sounds like a hostile takeover waiting to happen, you're absolutely right. I pulled out another document. This one made my blood run cold. Board Resolution 2022-A47, Restriction of Family Contact. The resolution was dated 3 years ago, right after our fight. I scanned the text with growing horror. Whereas the CEO has demonstrated emotional volatility regarding family matters. Whereas such volatility may impact fiduciary decision-making, the board hereby recommends limited contact with family members who may exert undue influence. They'd told him to stay away from me, not just suggested, recommended through official board resolution. My son hadn't abandoned me out of anger. He'd been told to abandon me by the people who controlled his company. Can you imagine? Building an empire only to become its prisoner. Let that sink in for a moment. I know, I couldn't believe it either. But the documents didn't lie. Black and white, signed and dated, legal and binding. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the next folder. This one had no label on the outside, just a red confidential stamp across the front. I opened it. Medical records spilled out onto my lap. Charles's medical records. My heart stopped. The first page was from Massachusetts General Hospital, dated 18 months ago. Patient, Charles Williams, DOB 08-15-1989. Diagnosis, Stage 2, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. My baby had a heart condition, and I didn't know. My vision blurred with tears. I forced myself to keep reading. Treatment plan, beta blockers, lifestyle modifications, quarterly monitoring. Prognosis, good with proper management. Surgical intervention may be required if condition progresses. There were more records beneath that first one. Cardiology appointments, test results, medication lists. All from the past 2 years. All kept secret from me. Think about that. My son had been dealing with a serious heart condition alone, while I'd been angry at him for not calling, while I'd been too proud to reach out first. He'd been sick, scared, probably terrified. And where was I? Who does that? What kind of mother doesn't know her child is sick? But then I found the non-disclosure agreements. 3 of them, stapled together, all signed by Charles, all promising not to disclose his medical condition to anyone, not to the press, not to shareholders, not to family. The penalty for breach? Immediate removal as CEO. They'd forced him to keep his illness secret, even from his own mother. If you're asking yourself what you would have done in my position, I want to hear it. Drop a comment and tell me your first move, because I was beyond blood boiling. I was volcanic. These people, these board members who I'd never met, had taken my son from me, controlled his money, controlled his decisions, controlled his health information. I wiped my eyes and kept digging through the safe. There had to be more. Had to be something that explained all of this. My fingers found another folder near the bottom. This one was different. Older. Worn at the edges. The label stopped my heart. Williams Foundation, in honor of Cassandra Monroe. Monroe. My maiden name. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were architectural drawings, plans for a building, a beautiful modern building with large windows. Williams Family Medical Center read the heading. Below it, providing free health care to underserved communities in honor of Cassandra Monroe Williams. The date on the plans was 4 years ago, before our fight, before everything fell apart. I flipped through page after page, budget projections, staffing plans, community outreach programs. Charles had been planning to build a medical center, in my honor, free healthcare for people who couldn't afford it. People like me. You're not crazy for thinking this is insane. My son had wanted to help people, to honor his mother, and someone had stopped him. I found the letter buried near the back of the folder, handwritten, Charles's handwriting. Dear Mom, by the time you read this, the Williams Foundation will be up and running. I know you never wanted my money. You wanted to know I still cared about the values you taught me. This is how I show you. This is how I prove that I remember. That every patient who walks through these doors doesn't have to choose between medicine and rent. That no mother has to suffer because she can't afford treatment. I'm doing this because of you, because you showed me what real strength looks like. I love you, Mom. Always, Charles. The tears came freely now, streaming down my face onto the letter, smudging the ink. But wait, it gets better, or worse depending on how you look at it. Because stapled to the back of that letter was another board resolution. Board Resolution 2021 Seat 12, Denial of Williams Foundation Proposal. Whereas the proposed foundation represents significant capital allocation, whereas said allocation may impact shareholder value, the board hereby rejects the Williams Foundation proposal in its entirety. Further attempts to allocate company resources to this project will be considered breach of fiduciary duty. They'd killed it. Charles had tried to honor me, to help people, to do something meaningful, and his board had crushed it. I sat there on the floor, surrounded by documents. My son's prison laid out in folders and contracts, his trapped money, his controlled decisions, his secret illness, his attempt to honor me, destroyed. If you've dealt with someone like this, you know exactly what I mean. The moment when you realize the villain isn't who you thought it was. My son wasn't the problem. He'd been trying to reach me the only way he could, and someone had been stopping him. I pulled myself up off the floor. My knees protested, my chest ached, but my mind was clearer than it had been in 3 years. I gathered the most important documents, the board restrictions, the medical records, the foundation plans, the evidence of what they'd done to my son. There was a business card paper-clipped to one of the folders. Sterling and Associates, corporate board consultants. The same name from the life insurance policies. The same name on half these documents. I turned the card over. A phone number, an address in San Francisco, and a handwritten note. In case of emergency, they will try to stop you. Charles's handwriting, recent, maybe just months old. He'd left me a trail, hidden in plain sight in this safe. Not emergency cash, emergency evidence. The coughing fit hit me then, harder than before, more violent. I doubled over the kitchen table, gasped for air between spasms. The documents scattered across the floor. But this time I wasn't just coughing from illness. I was coughing from fury. Someone had stolen my son from me. Someone had caged him, controlled him, silenced him. And they'd used my pride against us both. When the coughing finally stopped, I grabbed my phone, pulled up Charles's number that I hadn't called in 3 years. My finger hovered over the call button. But then I stopped. If his board was monitoring his family contact, if they'd gone this far to control him, a phone call wouldn't be enough. I needed to go higher, needed to expose this, needed to break the chains they'd wrapped around my son. I looked at the business card again. Sterling and Associates. Then I looked at another document I'd found. Board member names and contact information. 5 names. 5 people who'd imprisoned my son. And one name I recognized from the news. Someone famous. Someone powerful. Someone who was about to find out what a mother is capable of when you threaten her child. Before I tell you what happened in that boardroom, I need to know. Would you have done what I did? Comment yes if you'd fight for your child like this, or no if you think I took it too far. I grabbed my keys, grabbed the documents, and headed for the door. My son needed me, and for the first time in 3 years, I knew exactly what I had to do. I stood in my kitchen holding those documents. My hands had stopped shaking. Something had shifted inside me during those minutes on the floor. The grief was still there. The hurt was still there. But underneath it all, something else was rising. Something fierce. Something protective. Something dangerous. Rage. Not at Charles. At them. The faceless board members who'd built a cage around my son. Who'd trapped him with paperwork and threats. Who'd stolen 3 years from us. Now pause for a second. This wasn't the helpless anger of a sick woman who couldn't afford medicine. This was the fury of a mother who finally understood what had been done to her child. And there is nothing more dangerous than that. I spread the documents across my kitchen table, organized them the way I used to organize lesson plans back when I was teaching. Board restrictions here, medical records there, foundation plans in the middle, the life insurance policies stacked to the side. Each piece of paper was a weapon. Each contract was evidence. Each signature was proof. My son hadn't abandoned me. He'd been silenced, controlled, manipulated, threatened, and I'd spent 3 years hating him for it. The guilt tried to creep back in, that voice in my head whispering that I should have known, should have reached out, should have fought harder. But I shut that voice down fast. I need you to understand something. They'd used my pride against me, used our fight as an excuse to isolate Charles completely, turned mother and son into strangers so they could control him better. This wasn't my failure. This was their strategy, and it had worked perfectly. Until now. I picked up the board resolution about family contact. Read it again with clear eyes. Emotional volatility regarding family matters. They'd made me sound unstable, made our normal mother-son argument sound like evidence of my bad influence, given Charles a corporate reason to stay away. Can you imagine? Weaponizing a family fight to justify isolation, using love as a liability. If you're thinking this sounds like abuse, you're absolutely right. This was corporate abuse dressed up in legal language, and Charles had been living in it for 3 years. I thought about his heart condition, the diagnosis he'd hidden, the medications he was taking alone, the fear he must have felt with no one to talk to, no mother to comfort him, no family to lean on, just board members and lawyers and consultants, people who saw him as an asset, not a person. My chest tightened again, but this time it wasn't just the breathing problems. It was grief mixed with determination. I'd failed my son once by letting pride keep me away. I wouldn't fail him again. I grabbed a notebook from the drawer, Started writing down names from the documents. 5 board members, all from Sterling and Associates. Richard Pemberton, board chairman. Margaret Chen, chief financial advisor. David Kowalski, legal counsel. Jennifer Hartley, operations director. Thomas Sterling, founder Sterling and Associates. 5 people who'd turned my son into a puppet. I wrote down their titles, their contact information, everything the documents revealed about them. Margaret Chen had pushed the family contact restrictions. David Kowalski had written the succession planning documents. Thomas Sterling had initiated the life insurance policies. Each one had played a role. Each one had tightened the chains. Let that sink in for a moment. These weren't just aggressive board members. This was coordinated control. I kept digging through the papers, found meeting minutes from 2 years ago, a discussion about managing the CEO's emotional attachments. Charles had proposed the foundation again, had pushed back against their restrictions, and they'd threatened him. Continued resistance may result in board vote regarding leadership capacity. They'd threatened to have him declared incompetent, to take his own company away from him. If he didn't fall in line and forget about his mother, think about that. The protective rage inside me grew hotter. This wasn't just manipulation. This was extortion. I found my phone buried under a stack of papers, checked the time. 8:47 p.m. Too late to call lawyers, too late for most business offices. But I found a number repeated throughout the documents. Direct line to the board office, listed on letterheads, printed on resolutions. The number they used for urgent corporate matters. My finger hovered over the screen. This was it. The moment of decision. Call this number and there was no going back. Stay silent and nothing would change. I thought about Charles at 21 installing this safe. I'm doing this for us, he'd said. He'd been protecting me even then, planning ahead, trying to keep me safe. Now it was my turn to protect him. I pressed call before I could change my mind. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. My heart hammered against my ribs. 4 rings, 5. Then a click. Sterling and Associates Board Services. This is Amanda speaking. The voice was young, professional, detached. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Hello, Sterling and Associates, how may I help you? I found my voice. I need to speak with the board. I'm sorry, ma'am, the board members aren't available after hours. Can I schedule a callback for Monday morning? This can't wait until Monday. Amanda's tone shifted slightly, more cautious. What is this regarding? Charles Williams, and what your company has done to him. Silence on the other end. I could hear typing. Amanda pulling up files. I'm sorry, are you a shareholder? Legal representation? I'm his mother. More typing, faster now. Mrs. Williams, I'm showing here that family communications need to be directed through proper channels. I can email you the form. I don't need a form. I need an emergency meeting with the board. Amanda's voice went from cautious to dismissive. That particular tone that says, difficult person alert. Ma'am, the board doesn't take emergency meetings with family members. Corporate policy is very clear on this. If you have concerns, you'll need to submit them in writing. We'll review your request and respond within 15 business days. 15 business days, while Charles suffered alone, while they continued controlling every aspect of his life. Who does that? I have documents, I said, my voice steady now, strong. Documents proving board manipulation, illegal restrictions, coercion. I have medical records that were hidden from family. I have evidence of extortion and corporate abuse. The typing stopped. Mrs. Williams, I'm going to have to ask you to. No, you're going to listen. I was standing now, didn't remember getting up. I opened my son's safe tonight looking for medicine money. Instead, I found 3 years of evidence showing how you've imprisoned him, how you've isolated him, threatened him, controlled him. And I'm not going through your 15-day review process." Amanda's voice went cold. "Ma'am, if you continue making accusations, they're not accusations, they're facts." Board Resolution 2022-A47, succession planning dated 6 months ago. Non-disclosure agreements forcing Charles to hide a heart condition. Should I continue? And here's where it gets worse. Or better, depending on whose side you're on. Because Amanda went completely silent. Not thinking about it silent. Oh shit, silent. I know. I couldn't believe it either. She'd been prepared for an angry mother. Not for a mother with evidence. "Mrs. Williams," she finally said, I need to transfer you." "No transfers, no redirects, no forms. You're going to set up an emergency meeting. Tonight if possible, tomorrow morning at the latest. Or I'm walking these documents to every media outlet in San Francisco. Let me be very clear," I continued. "I'm a 62-year-old woman with a serious health condition. I have nothing to lose and everything to fight for. My son needs his mother, and his mother is done being polite. Comment yes if you've ever watched someone you love get controlled by people who only saw them as an asset. Someone who thinks corporate policy protects them from consequences. Someone who forgets that mothers don't play by corporate rules." Amanda was typing again, frantically now. "Hold, please," she said, her voice shaking slightly. The hold music was classical, peaceful, completely at odds with the war I'd just declared. I waited, my hand gripping the phone. 3 minutes passed, then 5. I wasn't hanging up. They could leave me on hold all night. Finally, the music cut off. A different voice, male, older, more authority. "Mrs. Williams, this is David Kowalski, General Counsel for the board." The name from my list, legal counsel, one of the 5 people who'd caged my son. "I understand you have some concerns," he said smoothly. "We'd be happy to address them through proper channels. I want a meeting, tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. With the entire board. No lawyers except you if you're already there." My voice was steel. "No delays, no excuses." Kowalski paused, calculating. "Mrs. Williams, the board doesn't respond to ultimatums. Then let's call it a request backed by evidence of corporate malfeasance." Another pause. Longer this time. I could almost hear him weighing options. Comply with the crazy mother or risk public exposure. "What evidence do you claim to have?" he asked carefully. "Everything Charles stored in the safe he gave me. The safe you told him was for emergency cash. Turns out it was for emergency truth. If your blood is boiling right now, mine was too. The satisfaction of hearing him realize his mistake. They'd put Charles's evidence in my house, thinking I'd never look, never know, never act." "I see," Kowalski said quietly. "Mrs. Williams, I think we can arrange something. Can you be here tomorrow at 10 a.m.? 9 a.m., your office. All 5 board members present." That's going to be difficult to arrange on such short notice. Then I suggest you start making phone calls. Because at 9:01, if I'm not sitting across from your board, I'm sitting across from reporters instead. Your choice, Mr. Kowalski." The silence stretched out, long enough that I thought he might call my bluff. But I wasn't bluffing, not anymore. 9 a.m., he finally said. "I'll send a car to pick you up." "No need. I'll find my own way. Just text me the address. And Mr. Kowalski, tell the others to bring their consciences. They're going to need them." I hung up before he could respond, set the phone down on the table. My hands were shaking again now. But not from fear or weakness, from adrenaline, from power, from purpose. I'd done it. I'd demanded a meeting with the people who'd stolen my son, and they'd agreed. Because they were afraid of what I knew, afraid of what I could expose. Good. They should be afraid. I looked at the documents spread across my table. Tomorrow morning I would walk into that boardroom, and I would break every chain they'd wrapped around Charles, or I would burn their reputations to the ground trying. Either way, this ended tomorrow. The protective fury of a mother had awakened, and nothing, not corporate policy, not legal threats, not anything, would stand between me and saving my son. I didn't sleep, couldn't sleep, spent the entire night organizing documents and rehearsing what I'd say. By 6 a.m. I was dressed in my best outfit, a navy blazer I'd worn to parent-teacher conferences years ago, still fit, barely, but it made me look serious, professional, not like a sick woman they could dismiss. The breathing problems hit me hard as I loaded the documents into my bag, a coughing fit that doubled me over the kitchen table. Blood-tinged tissue in my hand when it finally stopped. I stared at it for a long moment. This body was failing me, but I only needed it to hold together for a few more hours. Just long enough to save my son, so. The drive to San Francisco took 4 hours. I left at 5 in the morning to beat traffic. Every mile felt like a battle, my chest tight, my hands gripping the steering wheel. Rest stops every hour to catch my breath, to take medication I'd borrowed from a neighbor, to remind myself why I was doing this. Charles needed me. That was enough. Now pause for a second. I'd never been to my son's company headquarters, never been invited, never asked to visit. 3 years of distance meant I'd only seen it in magazine photos, but seeing it in person took my breath away. 47 stories of glass and steel. Williams Technologies etched across the entrance in letters taller than me. My son built this. My baby boy who used to build Lego towers in our living room. And somewhere inside, 5 people had turned his empire into his prison. I parked in the visitor lot at 8:45 a.m., grabbed my bag full of evidence, walked through those glass doors like I owned the place. The lobby was massive, modern, intimidating, marble floors that echoed with each step, a reception desk that looked like a spaceship command center. Cassandra Williams for the board meeting, I told the receptionist. She was young, professional, looked at me like I'd said something in a foreign language. I'm sorry, I don't see any. David Kowalski is expecting me. 9 a.m., call him. She hesitated, picked up the phone, spoke quietly into it while watching me with suspicious eyes. 30 seconds later, her expression changed. Mr. Kowalski will send someone down to escort you. I waited by a wall of photos showing Charles at various company events, ribbon cuttings, award ceremonies, charity galas. In every photo he looked successful, and in every photo he looked alone. The elevator dinged and a man in an expensive suit stepped out. Mrs. Williams, I'm David Kowalski. We spoke last night. His handshake was firm. His smile was fake. The board is assembled on the 47th floor. We rode the elevator in silence. He kept glancing at my bag like it might explode. Let that sink in for a moment. He was afraid of what I carried. Good. The elevator opened directly into a conference room. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire city. A massive table with 5 people seated around it. They all looked up when I entered, and I recognized each face from the documents. Richard Pemberton sat at the head. Board chairman. Silver hair. Cold eyes. Margaret Chen to his right. Financial advisor. Sharp suit. Sharper expression. Jennifer Hartley across from her, operations director, younger than I expected, nervous energy. Thomas Sterling near the window, founder of Sterling and Associates, the architect of all this. And David Kowalski taking his seat after closing the door behind us. Mrs. Williams, Pemberton said, his voice smooth as oil. Thank you for coming. Though I must say your demands last night were quite unusual. Desperation makes people do unusual things, I said. I set my bag on the table and pulled out the first folder. But I'm not desperate anymore. I'm informed. Margaret Chen leaned forward. Mrs. Williams, we understand you're concerned about Charles. Concerned? That's an interesting word choice. I opened the folder and slid documents across the table. I'm not concerned. I'm furious. These are board resolutions restricting Charles's ability to contact his own family. Pemberton barely glanced at them. Standard corporate governance. We have a responsibility to shareholders. To control your CEO's personal relationships? I pulled out another document, slid it toward Margaret. This is the denial of the Williams Foundation, a medical charity Charles wanted to build in my honor. You killed it. Why? Margaret's jaw tightened. The financials didn't make sense. The financials were fine. You just didn't want Charles remembering his values. Didn't want him remembering what his mother taught him. Can you imagine? The tension in that room was electric. 5 powerful people suddenly on the defensive, against one sick woman with a bag full of truth. Jennifer Hartley spoke up for the first time. Mrs. Williams, I think there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding. Just manipulation dressed up as policy. I pulled out the succession planning documents. This is my favorite. Incapacity protocols. Tell me, which of you gets to decide when my son is incapacitated? Thomas Sterling finally spoke. His voice was deeper than the others. You're taking these documents out of context. Am I? Because from where I'm sitting, you've built a cage. Financial restrictions, family isolation, medical secrecy. You've turned my son into a puppet. And here's where it gets worse. Pemberton stood up, tried to establish dominance through physicality. Mrs. Williams, you need to understand something. Charles is worth $3 billion. He runs a company with thousands of employees. That comes with responsibilities, oversight, protection from poor judgment. Protection or control. I stood too, met his eyes across that table. I found the life insurance policies, multiple policies, millions of dollars, all listing Charles's company as beneficiary if I die. The room went dead silent. If you're thinking this sounds insane, you're absolutely right. Margaret recovered first. Those are standard corporate-owned life insurance. On his estranged mother? Taken out right after we stopped speaking? How is that standard? Thomas Sterling's face had gone pale. Those policies were protective measures. Protective of what? Your investment? Your control over him if I'm not around to interfere? Kowalski jumped in, lawyer mode activated. Mrs. Williams, you're making serious accusations without understanding corporate law. Then explain it to me. I pulled out more documents, spread them across the table. Explain why Charles can't give his mother money without your permission. Explain why he has to hide a heart condition from his family. Explain why every attempt he's made to help people gets shut down. Jennifer Hartley looked genuinely distressed now. We didn't know about the heart condition. Yes, you did, I said, pulling out the NDAs. You made him sign non-disclosure agreements. Threatened to have him removed as CEO if he told anyone, including his mother. Pemberton sat back down, his smooth facade cracking. Charles signed those agreements voluntarily, under duress, under threat, under coercion. I know. I couldn't believe they were still trying to defend this either. But corporate predators don't admit guilt easily. They were scrambling, recalculating, looking for exits. Margaret tried a different approach, softer, more sympathetic. Mrs. Williams, I understand you're upset, but Charles is an adult. He made these decisions himself. We're just advisors. Advisors who threaten to declare him incompetent if he doesn't comply. I slid the succession documents toward her. You've been planning to take his company away. Waiting for the right moment to trigger your incapacity clause. Think about that. They'd built a trap, just waiting to spring it. Thomas Sterling finally showed emotion, but not the one I expected. Not anger or defensiveness. Fear. Mrs. Williams, he said quietly, you don't understand the full situation. Then explain it. He glanced at the others. Something passed between them. Some unspoken communication that made my skin crawl. There are interests beyond this board, Sterling said carefully. Parties who have invested significantly in Williams Technologies. Parties who expect certain outcomes. Who does that? What kind of answer is that? Are you telling me there are people above you? I asked. People pulling your strings while you pull Charles's? Pemberton cut in sharply. Thomas, that's enough. But Sterling kept going, his voice urgent now. Your son is in more danger than you realize. These policies, these restrictions, some of them are protection. Protection from what? I demanded. The room erupted. Pemberton shouting at Sterling to stop talking. Margaret arguing with Kowalski in rapid whispers. Jennifer Hartley looking like she might cry. And Thomas Sterling staring at me with genuine fear in his eyes. Not fear of me. Fear for Charles. Comment yes if you've ever watched someone you love get controlled by people who only saw them as an asset. Someone who realizes they're in over their head? Who wants to tell you the truth but can't? I let the chaos die down, then spoke quietly. One of you knows something the others don't. One of you is actually worried about my son's safety. And the rest of you are just worried about losing control. Sterling opened his mouth, then closed it. Pemberton's voice was ice. This meeting is over. Mrs. Williams, you'll be hearing from our lawyers. No, you'll be hearing from mine. And from the press. And from regulatory agencies. Because I'm not done exposing what you've done. I gathered my documents, stuffed them back in my bag. You have 48 hours to release Charles from every restriction. Financial, personal, medical, all of it. Or I make this public, and we see how shareholders feel about board members who cage their CEO. I walked toward the elevator, then stopped, turned back to look at Thomas Sterling. If my son is really in danger, you have my number. Use it. The elevator doors closed on 5 faces ranging from fury to fear, and as I descended 47 floors back to reality, I realized I'd only uncovered part of the truth. The board wasn't just controlling Charles. They were protecting him from something, or someone. And whatever that something was, it was worse than anything I'd imagined. I was halfway to the elevator when I heard footsteps behind me. Fast footsteps. Urgent. Mrs. Williams? Wait. I turned to find Thomas Sterling jogging toward me. His face was pale. His expensive suit suddenly looked rumpled. He glanced back at the conference room door, then grabbed my arm and pulled me toward a side hallway. We can't talk here, he whispered. His hand was shaking against my sleeve. This wasn't the confident board member from minutes ago. This was a man terrified of being overheard. He led me to a small office at the end of the hall, locked the door behind us, stood there for a moment, just breathing, like he was trying to decide if he could really do this. You said Charles is in danger, I said. Talk. Sterling moved to the window, looked out at the city below. 2 weeks ago, Charles collapsed during a board meeting. My heart stopped. He was mid-sentence talking about quarterly projections, then just went down, hit his head on the table on the way to the floor. The room tilted around me. Where is he? My voice barely worked. Is he okay? Why didn't anyone call me? Now pause for a second. My son had been unconscious for 2 weeks, and not one person had thought to tell his mother. Let that sink in for a moment. Sterling finally turned to face me. He's at Meadowbrook Medical. It's a private facility about 40 miles north of here. The company owns it. We use it for sensitive situations. Sensitive situations? He's not a PR problem. He's a person. I know. Sterling ran his hands through his hair. But you have to understand, the moment Charles went down, everything changed. He pulled out his phone, showed me a photo. Charles on a hospital bed, monitors everywhere, tubes and wires. My baby looked so small in that bed, so vulnerable. I grabbed the phone from Sterling's hands, stared at my son's face, pale, unconscious, alone. The tears came before I could stop them. What happened to him? I whispered. Sterling took his phone back gently. The doctors say it's related to his heart condition. Hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. You knew about that? I nodded. Couldn't speak. It caused irregular heartbeats, reduced blood flow to his brain. He had what they call a syncopal episode. Basically, he fainted. But he hit his head hard, suffered a concussion, and when they ran more tests, he stopped, closed his eyes. What? When they ran tests, what? They found evidence of multiple prior episodes. Small ones. Mini strokes, essentially. Over the past 6 months. I need you to understand something. My son had been having strokes, multiple strokes, and he'd been dealing with it alone, under the control of people who saw him as a commodity. Can you imagine? Why didn't he get help? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Sterling's jaw tightened. Because we wouldn't let him. Because every time he mentioned needing to step back, needing rest, we reminded him of the incapacity clause. Reminded him that if he admitted he couldn't handle the job, we'd have grounds to remove him permanently. The rage that flooded through me then was volcanic. You threatened him while he was sick, while he was scared. We thought we were protecting the company. You were torturing my son. Sterling flinched. I know. I know that now. But Pemberton kept saying we had a responsibility to shareholders. That Charles's health issues were a liability. That we needed to control the narrative, control the situation. And here's where it gets worse. The controlling contracts, I said slowly. The life insurance policies. You knew he was getting sicker. You knew he might die. So you made sure you'd profit from it either way. Sterling's silence was answer enough. If you're thinking this is beyond evil, you're absolutely right. They'd turned my son's illness into an investment opportunity. Who else knows, I demanded, about Charles's condition, about where he is? Just the board, the medical staff at Meadowbrook, and a few key investors who insisted on being kept informed. Investors? You're giving status updates to investors while his mother is left in the dark? Who does that? What kind of people prioritize shareholders over humanity? I grabbed my bag from where I'd set it down. I'm going to Meadowbrook, now. Sterling stepped in front of the door. Mrs. Williams, you can't just... Watch me. The facility is secure. They won't let you in without authorization. Then authorize me. You're on the board. Make it happen. He pulled out his phone again, hesitated. If I do this, Pemberton will have me removed. Good. You deserve it. But do it anyway. Because it's the right thing to do. And because if you don't, I'm calling every news station in California. Sterling stared at me for a long moment. Then he made the call. This is Thomas Sterling, board member for Williams Technologies. I'm authorizing immediate family visitation for Charles Williams. Cassandra Williams, his mother. She's coming now. He listened to whoever was on the other end. "I don't care what the protocols are. This is a direct board order. Let her see her son or I'm pulling our funding from your facility." He hung up, looked exhausted. "They'll let you in, but Mrs. Williams, you need to prepare yourself. Charles isn't conscious, hasn't been since the collapse." The words hit me like a physical blow. 2 weeks unconscious. 2 weeks of wondering if he'd wake up. 2 weeks alone in that facility with no one who loved him. Think about that. "Why isn't he at a real hospital?" I asked. "Why keep him locked away in some corporate medical center?" Sterling's face went even paler. "Because if word gets out that Charles Williams is incapacitated, the stock price crashes, investors panic, competitors circle." Pemberton convinced the others that keeping it quiet was best for everyone. Best for everyone? Or best for the board? No answer. Because we both knew the truth. They'd prioritized money over my son's life, hidden him away like a dirty secret, while they maintained the lie that he was still running the company. If you're invested in seeing how this ends, go ahead and subscribe. There are more stories like this one, and I don't want you to miss them. Because what happened next changed everything. I pushed past Sterling toward the door. "Give me the address." He pulled out a business card, wrote on the back, "Meadowbrook Medical, 1847 Canyon Road. Mrs. Williams, when you get there, there's something else you should know." I turned back. "What now?" "The incapacity clause. The one in Charles's contract. It activates automatically after 14 days of unconsciousness. Today is day 14. My blood went cold. What does that mean? It means at midnight tonight, the board can vote to remove Charles as CEO, to transfer all company authority to an interim leadership team, to essentially take everything he built. They're waiting for him to die? Or stay unconscious long enough that it doesn't matter? I couldn't breathe, couldn't process what I was hearing. They'd built a countdown timer into my son's life, waiting for him to be sick long enough to justify stealing his company. "Pemberton's calling an emergency meeting for 8 p.m. tonight," Sterling continued. "He's going to push for the vote, and he has the support of at least 3 other board members. I'm the only one who's been hesitating." I looked Sterling straight in the eyes. "You want to make up for what you've done? You vote against that resolution. You fight them with everything you have. Because I'm going to my son right now. And if he can hear me at all, I'm waking him up." Sterling nodded. "I'll try to delay the vote. Don't try, do it. Buy me time, whatever it takes." I walked out of that office, down the elevator, through the lobby, into my car with shaking hands. The address Sterling gave me was programmed into my GPS. 43 miles, 52 minutes with traffic. I had less than 10 hours before they voted to steal Charles's life. 10 hours to wake him up. 10 hours to break every chain they'd wrapped around him. My chest was tight. My hands gripped the steering wheel. Every breath hurt. Every movement hurt. But none of that mattered. My son needed me, and for 2 weeks he'd been trapped in that facility. Unconscious, alone, controlled even in his sleep. I thought about the documents in my bag, the evidence of what they'd done, the proof of their manipulation and greed. They'd taken advantage of Charles's illness, used his vulnerability as an opportunity, trapped him in contracts designed to steal his company. And they'd done it all while keeping him away from the one person who would fight for him. His mother. Well, they made one critical mistake. They let me find out. And now I was coming for my son. I pulled out of the parking garage into San Francisco traffic. My GPS showed the route north toward Meadowbrook Medical, toward my unconscious son lying in a corporate-owned facility, toward the board members who thought they'd won. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Mrs. Williams?" A woman's voice, young, scared. "This is Jennifer Hartley, from the board. What do you want?" I wanted you to know something. Charles talked about you all the time. In meetings, in private conversations. He missed you. He wanted to call you every day. But we made him feel like he couldn't." Her voice cracked. "I'm sorry for everything we did to him. To both of you." She hung up before I could respond, but her words echoed in my head. He missed you. He wanted to call. 3 years of silence, not because Charles stopped loving me, because they made it impossible for him to reach out. The tears came again, angry tears this time. I wiped them away and pressed harder on the gas. The highway stretched out before me, 43 miles between me and my son, between justice and corruption, between mother and child. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror, saw my 62-year-old face, saw the sickness in my complexion, saw the exhaustion in my eyes. But underneath all of that, I saw fury. Pure, protective, unstoppable. They'd taken advantage of my son's illness, used his fear and pain as weapons against him, built an empire of control on his suffering, and now they thought they could vote him out of existence. My hands tightened on the wheel. My foot pressed the accelerator. The distance closed between me and Meadowbrook Medical's own. Between me and the board's deadline. Between me and my baby boy, who'd been alone for too long. "I'm coming, Charles," I whispered. "Hold on. Your mother is coming. And I'm taking you back." The drive to Meadowbrook Medical felt like it took forever. Every red light, every slow driver, every second wasted. My chest burned with each breath. The coughing fits came twice during the drive. I had to pull over both times, gasping for air, praying I'd make it. But I kept going, because Charles needed me more than I needed to breathe. The facility appeared at the end of a long, winding road. Modern building, manicured lawns, security gate. It looked more like a luxury hotel than a medical center, except for the 12-foot fence surrounding the entire property, and the cameras mounted every 20 feet. This wasn't a hospital. This was a prison. I pulled up to the security gate at 11:23 a.m. A guard stepped out of the booth. "Name and purpose?" he asked through my window. "Cassandra Williams. I'm here to see my son, Charles Williams." He checked his clipboard, then his computer. "I don't see you on the visitor list. Thomas Sterling called ahead. Board authorization." The guard made a phone call, spoke quietly, glanced at me several times, finally nodded and hung up. "Park in visitor lot A. Someone will meet you at the entrance." The gate rolled open with an ominous mechanical hum. I drove through feeling like I was entering enemy territory, because that's exactly what this was. Now pause for a second. My son had been held here for 2 weeks, behind fences and cameras and security guards, not for his protection, for their control. Let that sink in for a moment. I parked and grabbed my bag of documents. My legs shook as I walked toward the entrance. Each step was a battle against exhaustion and fear. But I kept moving, kept breathing, kept fighting. A woman in a crisp gray suit waited at the door. "Mrs. Williams, I'm Dr. Patricia Marsh, Facility Director." Her smile was professional. Her eyes were calculating. "I understand you're here to see your son." "I'm here to take him home." Her smile faltered. "That's not how this works. Charles is under specialized care. Charles is being held prisoner while his board votes to steal his company." Dr. Marsh's expression hardened. "Mrs. Williams, I think there's been a misunderstanding." No misunderstanding, just corruption dressed up as healthcare. Now let me see my son, or I'm calling every regulatory agency in California. Can you imagine? Having to threaten people just to see your own child. Dr. Marsh pulled out her phone, made a call. Yes, we have a situation. The mother. Yes, Sterling authorized it. No, she's insisting. Understood. She hung up, looked at me with barely concealed irritation. There are protocols, NDAs, confidentiality agreements. I pulled documents from my bag and thrust them at her. I have board resolutions showing illegal coercion. I have evidence of medical information being withheld from family. I have life insurance policies that look a lot like murder-for-profit schemes. Should I continue? Or would you prefer I start with the media? Dr. Marsh's face went pale. She looked at the documents, then at me. The calculation in her eyes shifted, from difficult family member to potential legal nightmare. Follow me, she said quietly. We walked through sterile hallways. Everything was white, clean, empty. No other patients visible. No sounds except our footsteps. This wasn't a medical facility serving multiple clients. This was a luxury prison for one very valuable hostage. Dr. Marsh stopped at a door marked Private Suite 7. Before you go in, you need to understand. Save it. I don't need understanding. I need my son. I pushed past her and opened the door. The room took my breath away. Not because it was beautiful, though it was. Large windows, comfortable furniture, state-of-the-art medical equipment, but because of the figure in the bed. Charles. My baby. My son. My entire world. He looked so small under those white sheets. Monitors beeped softly around him. An IV drip connected to his arm. His face was pale, thin, exhausted even in unconsciousness. I need you to understand something. Seeing your child like that breaks something inside you, something fundamental that can never be repaired. I moved to his bedside on legs that barely worked, reached out with shaking hands, touched his face, his hand, his hair. Charles, I whispered. Baby, it's Mom. No response, just the steady beep of monitors. Mrs. Williams, as I was trying to explain, "Get out," I said without looking at Dr. Marsh. But, get out, now, or I start making phone calls. The door clicked shut behind her, leaving me alone with my unconscious son. I pulled a chair close to his bed, sat down heavily, every muscle screaming, took his hand in both of mine. Charles, I'm so sorry, I said, tears streaming freely now. I'm sorry I was too proud to call. I'm sorry I didn't know what they were doing to you. I'm sorry I wasn't there when you needed me. His hand was warm in mine, but unresponsive. I found the safe, I continued. I opened it looking for medicine money. Instead, I found the truth, all of it. What they did to you, what they took from you. The foundation you wanted to build for me. Think about that. A mother confessing to her unconscious son, hoping somehow he could hear, could forgive, could come back. I sat there for what felt like hours, talking to him, telling him everything, about the documents, the board meeting, Sterling's confession, about how I'd demanded they release him from their control, about how I'd fight them with everything I had left. And here's where it gets worse, or better, depending on how you look at it. Because at 12:47 p.m., Charles's fingers moved in my hand. Just a twitch, barely noticeable, but I felt it. Charles? I leaned closer. Baby, can you hear me? Another twitch, stronger this time. His eyelids fluttered. That's it. Come on. Come back to me. His eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first, blinking against the light. Then they found my face and widened. Mom! His voice was barely a whisper, rough from disuse, confused, disbelieving. I'm here, baby. I'm right here. Tears spilled from his eyes. You came. Of course I came. I'm your mother. He tried to sit up, failed, fell back against the pillows. How long? What happened? You collapsed 2 weeks ago. Heart condition caused you to faint. But you're awake now. You're okay. If you're thinking this reunion is everything, you're absolutely right. 3 years of silence, 2 weeks of unconsciousness. And finally, mother and son were together again. Charles gripped my hand tighter. Mom, I tried to call you. So many times. But they said, I know what they said. I found the documents in the safe, Charles. I know everything they did to you. His face crumpled. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I let them. No. You don't apologize for being manipulated. You don't apologize for being trapped. This wasn't your fault. He was crying fully now, years of suppressed emotion breaking free. I wanted to break free from them. Tried so many times. But every time I pushed back, they threatened me. Said they'd remove me as CEO, destroy my reputation, tie me up in lawsuits for years. Said no one would believe me over them. I brushed his hair back from his forehead, the way I used to when he was little and having nightmares. They underestimated one thing, I said. What? They underestimated your mother. A weak laugh escaped him, then a grimace of pain. You opened the safe. I can't believe you actually opened it. I needed medicine money. I'm sick, Charles. Pretty sick. Can't afford treatment. His eyes widened in horror. What? Why didn't you? Because I was too proud, too hurt, too stupid. Just like you were too controlled to reach out. They used our fight against us, used our pride as a weapon. Made us both prisoners in different ways. Comment. Yes, if you've ever watched someone you love get controlled by people who only saw them as an asset, someone who systematically destroys relationships to maintain control, someone who weaponizes love itself. Charles struggled to sit up again. I helped him, adjusted his pillows, made him comfortable. What time is it? He asked suddenly. Almost 1 o'clock. Why? His face went pale. The vote. They're voting tonight. To remove me. The incapacity clause. I know. Sterling told me everything. That's why I'm here. To wake you up before they could steal your company. He looked at me with such raw emotion. Gratitude. Relief. Love. Fear. Mom, even if I'm awake, they'll still try. They'll say I'm not competent, not ready to return. They've been planning this for months. I pulled out my phone. Then we make sure everyone knows you're awake. And that you're firing every single one of them. Can I do that? You're the founder and majority shareholder, right? He nodded slowly. Technically, yes, but no buts. You built this company. You saved your documentation. You left me the evidence I needed to expose them. Now we fight back, together. Charles stared at me for a long moment. Then something shifted in his expression. The fear receded, replaced by determination. You opened the safe, he said, and you're not ashamed. Not even a little bit, I confirmed. That safe was never about emergency cash. It was about emergency truth, and I found it. He squeezed my hand. I missed you so much, Mom. Every single day, I missed you so much it hurt. I missed you too, baby. More than you'll ever know. We sat there crying together. making up for 3 years of lost time in a few precious moments. Then Charles took a deep breath, winced. Okay, tell me the plan. How do we take them down? I smiled through my tears. First, you get your strength back. Call your own doctor. Not one of theirs, someone you trust. Then we call an emergency press conference. You announce you're resuming full control of Williams Technologies. And that effective immediately, the entire board is terminated. They'll fight it. Let them. We have the documents. We have the truth. We have each other. Charles nodded, his expression hardening. I want Sterling to stay. He helped you. He called to authorize your visit. Your call, but the others go. All of them. He pulled out the IV from his arm with shaking hands. Then let's do this. I'm done being their prisoner. I helped him stand. He was unsteady but determined. We need to get you out of here first, I said. This facility is controlled by Sterling and Associates. I'm walking you out of here right now. Charles grabbed my arm. Not for support, though he needed it, but to stop me, to look me in the eyes. Thank you, Mom, for not giving up on me, for being brave enough to open that safe, for coming here when you're sick and fighting your own battles. You saved my life. I cupped his face in my hands. That's what mothers do, baby. We save our children. No matter what it costs us. Now let's go reclaim your empire. And then we're both getting proper medical treatment. Deal? Deal. We walked toward the door together, mother and son, united again, ready to face whatever came next. Behind us, the monitors beeped their protest. Ahead of us, a facility full of people who'd tried to keep us apart. But none of that mattered anymore, because I'd done what I came here to do. I'd rescued my son from his corporate prison, and together, we were going to burn that prison to the ground. Dr. Marsh tried to stop us as we walked out of Charles's room. Mr. Williams, you can't just leave. You need medical clearance. I'm clearance enough, I said, and we're done here. Charles leaned on my arm, but his voice was strong. Send my final bill to Sterling and Associates. They've been paying for everything else. We walked through those sterile hallways together, mother and son, united after 3 years of forced separation. Every step felt like victory. The security guard at the gate looked confused as we approached. Mr. Williams, do you need, I need to never see this place again, Charles said. The gate opened. We drove through, and I watched that prison disappear in my rearview mirror. Charles sat in the passenger seat breathing hard, not from exertion, from relief. Where are we going? He asked. Somewhere they can't control you anymore. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I'd found in the documents. Richard Chen, Charles's college roommate, now a corporate attorney. The documents showed Charles had tried to reach him multiple times, but the board had blocked the communications. Richard Chen, a voice answered. Mr. Chen, this is Cassandra Williams, Charles Williams' mother. Silence. Then, is Charles okay? I've been trying to reach him for weeks. He's with me, and he needs a lawyer he can trust. One the board doesn't control. I'm texting you an address right now. Can you meet us? I'll be there in an hour. Now, pause for a second. Everything was coming together. The evidence, the lawyer, the truth, all the pieces Charles had hidden in that safe were about to destroy his captors. I drove us to a small cafe 40 minutes from Meadowbrook. Somewhere public. Somewhere safe. Somewhere the board couldn't reach us without witnesses. We sat in a back booth with coffee neither of us could drink. Charles's hands shook as he held the cup. Mom, I need to tell you something. About why I really pushed you away 3 years ago. I reached across the table, took his hand. You don't have to. Yes, I do. You need to understand. He took a shaky breath. When I first got the heart diagnosis, I was terrified. Not just of dying, of being weak. My whole life I'd been the strong one, the successful one, the son who made his mother proud. Let that sink in for a moment. My baby thought showing vulnerability would disappoint me. And then the board started using it against me, he continued. Every time I mentioned needing rest, they called it weakness. Every time I wanted to slow down, they threatened the incapacity clause. I felt trapped, powerless, like a failure. His voice broke. That night in San Francisco when we fought, when I said those terrible things about you never making anything of yourself, I was really talking about me. Can you imagine? The cruelty of self-hatred projected onto the person you love most. I looked at you and saw what I was becoming, Charles whispered. Someone whose worth wasn't tied to money or success. Someone who had love and dignity without billions in the bank. And I was ashamed. Ashamed that I'd sold my soul for wealth. Ashamed that I'd let them turn me into something you wouldn't recognize. Tears streamed down his face. I pushed you away because I was ashamed of needing help. Ashamed of being sick. Ashamed of not being the son you deserved. I need you to understand something. Hearing your child blame themselves for being human breaks your heart. Charles, look at me. He met my eyes. Both of us crying openly in that cafe. You never stopped being my son. Not for 1 second. Not when you were sick. Not when you were trapped. Not even when you said those hurtful things. Because I know who you really are. You're the boy who wanted to build a medical center in my honor. The man who kept evidence of corruption so someday it could be exposed. The son who was strong enough to survive 3 years of corporate abuse. Think about that. Strength isn't never needing help. Strength is surviving when you're drowning and can't call for rescue. The cafe door opened. A man in his 30s rushed in. Asian features, sharp eyes, expensive suit. Richard Chen spotted us and practically ran to our booth. Charles, my God, what happened to you? Charles stood on shaky legs. They embraced. Long story. Mom has the documentation. I pulled the folders from my bag, spread them across the table between coffee cups and napkins. Richard's eyes widened as he scanned document after document. This is criminal, he breathed. Coercion, breach of fiduciary duty, possible fraud. The life insurance policies alone could be prosecuted as conspiracy. He looked up at Charles. How long has this been going on? 3 years, since right after Mom and I stopped talking. Richard's jaw tightened. They isolated you deliberately, cut you off from anyone who might help you escape. This is textbook corporate abuse. And here's where it gets worse. Or better, depending on whose side you're on. Richard pulled out his laptop right there in the cafe. We're filing emergency injunctions. Today. Right now. Blocking the board vote. Freezing their authority. And then we're calling a press conference. Charles looked nervous. The press? Richard, if this goes public, it needs to go public, I interrupted. They controlled you through secrecy, through shame, through making you feel like admitting weakness would destroy you. The only way to break that power is truth. If you're thinking this is the moment everything changes, you're absolutely right. Charles stared at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay. We tell the truth, all of it, Richard typed furiously. I'm calling contacts at major networks. Bloomberg, CNBC, Wall Street Journal. By tonight, everyone will know what Sterling and Associates did. What about the board vote? Charles asked. They're meeting at 8 p.m. to remove me. Let them meet, Richard said. We'll have injunctions filed by 5 p.m. By the time they sit down, they'll be facing legal action. And by tomorrow morning, they'll be facing public outrage. He looked at Charles seriously. But you need to be ready. This means admitting your illness publicly. Admitting you were manipulated. Admitting you needed help. Can you do that? Charles glanced at me. I saw the fear in his eyes, the shame, the vulnerability. But underneath it all, I saw something else. Hope. My mother drove 4 hours while seriously ill to save me, he said. She opened a safe she thought would make her a thief. She demanded a meeting with people who terrified her. She did all that while she could barely breathe. His voice grew stronger. If she can be that brave while dying, I can be brave enough to tell the truth while living. I know. I couldn't believe how far we'd both come either. From pride-driven silence to truth-driven courage. Richard smiled. Then let's break some chains. For the next 3 hours, that cafe booth became our war room. Richard drafted legal documents. Charles wrote his statement for the press. I organized evidence by severity and impact. We built our case piece by piece, every contract, every threat, every manipulation. All of it documented, all of it ready to expose. At 4:47 p.m., Richard hit send on the injunction filings. Done. The board is officially blocked from voting. They're probably receiving notification right now. Charles's phone exploded with messages. Pemberton, Chen, Kowalski, even Sterling, all demanding to know what was happening. Charles silenced his phone without reading them. Let them wonder. Let them panic. The way they made me panic for 3 years. Richard stood up. Press conference is set for 9 a.m. tomorrow. Major networks confirmed. This is going to be huge. Charles, you should rest tonight. Prepare mentally. Mrs. Williams, you look exhausted. When did you last take your medication? I'd forgotten about my own illness for hours. Forgotten about the breathing problems and the pain. Forgotten everything except saving my son. But now that Richard mentioned it, the exhaustion crashed over me. I'm okay, I lied. Charles saw through it immediately. No, you're not. We're getting you to a hospital. After everything you did for me, I'm making sure you're treated. Charles, I can't afford. Mom, I'm a billionaire. I can afford it. And now that the board can't block me, I'm paying for the best treatment money can buy. Comment, yes. If you've ever watched someone you love get controlled by people who only saw them as an asset. Someone who fights so hard for you that they forget about themselves. That's what Charles did for 3 years behind his cage. And that's what I'd done today. Now we were both going to heal. Together. Richard drove us to San Francisco General. A real hospital. Not a corporate prison. They admitted me immediately when they heard my symptoms. Put me in a room next to Charles's private suite, side by side, mother and son. Finally safe. The doctors confirmed what I already knew. My condition was serious, but treatable. I'd need medication, rest, monitoring. All things I could afford now. All things Charles insisted on providing. You raised me alone on a teacher's salary, he said from my doorway. Sacrificed everything so I could go to MIT. Gave me every advantage you never had. Now it's my turn to take care of you. I smiled through the oxygen mask they'd given me. You never stopped being my son, I whispered. Charles walked to my bedside, took my hand. And you never stopped being my mother. Even when they tried to make me forget. Even when pride kept us apart. Even when I said unforgivable things. You came for me anyway. We sat there in comfortable silence. 3 years of pain slowly beginning to heal. Outside my hospital room, Richard was coordinating our attack. Making final preparations for tomorrow's press conference. Ensuring the board couldn't escape what was coming. Inside, Charles and I simply existed together. No performance, no pretense, no corporate masks. Just a mother and son who'd found each other again. "Mom?" Charles said quietly. "Yeah, baby? Thank you for opening the safe. Thank you for being brave enough to use what you found. Thank you for not giving up on me." I squeezed his hand. "You never stopped being my son," I repeated. "Now let's make sure you stop being their prisoner." Charles smiled, really smiled, for the first time in 3 years. "Tomorrow we break every chain they built. Tomorrow we tell the truth they tried to bury. Tomorrow we take back everything they stole." I nodded. "Tomorrow. But tonight we rest. Tomorrow we fight." He kissed my forehead like I used to kiss his when he was little. "Tomorrow we win, Mom. We already won, baby. We found each other again. Everything else is just paperwork." And as I drifted off to sleep in that hospital bed, with my son safe in the room next door, with justice waiting in the morning, I felt something I hadn't felt in 3 years. Hope. Real, solid, unshakable hope. The board had made one fatal mistake. They'd underestimated a mother's love. And tomorrow, the whole world would see what happened when you caged a billionaire's conscience, when you trapped a son and weaponized his shame, when you thought corporate power could defeat family bonds. Tomorrow, they'd learn. But tonight, we rested. Mother and son. Finally free. At sunrise, my hospital room glowed soft and gold. Charles sat beside me, his phone buzzing with updates, news alerts, messages from lawyers and reporters. The world was learning the truth. By noon, it was everywhere. Front-page headlines, trending hashtags, network anchors breaking the story. Board scandal at Williams Technologies, allegations of abuse, exploitation, and corporate malfeasance. The board never saw it coming. Regulators moved in. Shareholders called for an emergency vote. Richard Chen led the legal charge, filed for damages, accountability, and immediate board removal. Civil lawsuits, personal liability, sanctions for breach of fiduciary duty, fines, injunctions, reputational collapse. Pemberton tried to threaten, then bargain, then disappear. But damning evidence followed him everywhere. By evening, my son officially reclaimed control of his own company. No more restrictions. No more secrecy. And here's where it gets better. Charles fired every board member who tried to cage him. He appointed Sterling as interim advisor while the company underwent reforms. The headlines shifted. Williams Technologies under new leadership. Founder commits to transparency and ethical governance. Charles came straight to my room, bouquet of wildflowers in hand. His apology, so raw, so overdue, left both of us in tears. "Mom, I'm sorry for every phone call I didn't make, every truth I hid, every cruel thing I said when I wanted you close but couldn't admit it." I squeezed his hand. "I opened that safe for medicine money. I never asked for more, but I found something far more important. Not cash, not power. Truth, family, freedom. We healed together, slowly. He paid for my treatment, out in the open. No shame, no secrecy. Doctors gave me hope, a real chance at health, at years together. For the first time, I didn't have to hide my illness. I was seen by my son, by the world. And Charles was finally seen for who he really was, not just the billionaire, but the son who wanted to honor his mother. Now pause for a second. In the weeks that followed, Charles restarted the foundation he'd once hidden away in corporate folders. He named it the Cassandra Monroe Center for Healing. Press attended the ribbon cutting. Charles gave a speech, his voice strong, emotional, proud. He told the world about the cost of shame, the poison of isolation, and the power of coming home. The foundation would help families choose medicine over rent. It would be the legacy we almost lost to greed. And here's where it gets better. Charles stood by my side. He said, "I built this because my mother taught me what strength looks like. I built this because she risked everything to rescue me when I was lost." If you've dealt with someone like this, a child, a parent, anyone you've lost then found again, you know exactly what I mean. Our story ended not with riches, but with justice. Not with power, but with healing. Richard Chen became our ally, the lawyer who fought the final battles nobody else could. Sterling stayed on with limited powers, determined to help fix what he'd helped break. Pemberton and his cohort were barred from ever serving as directors again. Their names faded as our foundation rose. In the quiet after the storm, Charles and I sat together under a June sky on the front steps of the center. He leaned his head on my shoulder. We watched patients arrive. "I can't believe we made it," he whispered. "We did more than survive," I said. "We built something new, something that can't be taken away." Charles nodded. "You saved my soul, Mom. By opening that safe, you saved both our lives." I kissed his forehead. Money can buy medicine, but truth can give us back ourselves. If this story made you feel something, anger, hope, relief, anything, hit that like button. It tells me these stories matter to you. I'm curious where this story reached you. Drop your city or country in the comments below. If this story meant something to you, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Because sometimes, the key isn't just to the safe. It's to every locked room inside us. And when you find it, you save more than your own life. You save someone you love. That's what opening that safe did for me. It didn't just give me evidence, it gave me my son back.